notice through AI that there's a spike that happens in the signal, then we know that when you see green, this spike happens. And because they're controlling the content and probably, to some extent in the research level, able to monitor, the brain computer interface or whatever the signals are, they're going to be able to really shortcut the learning process very fast because they have full closed loop controlled in some respect. So it's going to be really exciting, and I'll shut up about all the nerdiness.
So Tyler, you want me to? I will toggle in between and this survey form. That's what I did in the earlier session. Yeah.
Yes. So we'll wait another minute or two for everyone to jump in.
Yep.
So that everyone can take the survey here in a minute. Okay. If you haven't already, please do click on the link at the top of the room and take our survey to help us decide if we should move the start now that we're going into time change season, because Europe and the UK just changed their clocks yesterday, and America is going to change the clock back this Sunday. So it's a good time for the first time ever, to revisit, should we or should we not change time zones of any kind. So the question is very incredibly simple. What time should we start Tech News each day? And you can that's it. We don't ask for your email, your name, nothing. Just the time. So please take 10 seconds and click on the link at the top of the club and help us figure out. Somebody just added 12:01 p.m. I imagine it's because they want to make sure 12 p.m. is in the middle of the day and not confuse it with the morning. So, please, we already have 113 responses, but keep going. It's been very cool to watch the results of this. And Google gives us this really nice calculated, we can see very clearly which one is in the lead. It's like a very beautiful way that they represent the data. And we give you a second choice as well, which is incredibly insightful as well. Anyway, so please do that. We'll try to remind people every 30 minutes to do that, because we want to make sure everyone gets a chance to chime in with that. So until the next 30 minutes, we're now right at the top of the hour, so let's jump into it.
Tyler,
yes, Messi.
Can I ask, the questions you were asking, was it for just the morning session, or does it include the afternoon as well?
Well, I want to just know what primarily, because the reason we do it twice is because if you only do it once per day, you're going to piss off somebody on the planet because it's not possible to pick a time that's convenient for Asia, US, and Europe. One of them, you can only get 2 out of 3. So,
right.
And Africa, you and Mabwana and others are in Africa as well. Then it gets really impossible to. That's why we do it twice a day. So we currently do it 7 a.m. UK, 7 a.m. Pacific, specifically for the kind of European morning and the American morning. That's kind of the idea. And then for Americans who don't like the morning, they can do the European morning, which is their evening. And so it seems to have worked out very well thus far. However, we're stabbing in the dark. We don't really know. So now that we've got, we did this survey when we did the European morning session, 8 hours ago. And we've got the data from that. And that's been incredibly insightful. And now we're asking the American room, which is this room. Please click on the link above my head and take 10 seconds to answer one question. What time should we start Tech News Around the World for you? If you were
at
the
this
boss.
Time. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
So what did you say, Messi? What time would you start it?
Well, no, the morning one, when there was that poll, I did 6 and 7. It doesn't really matter to me. They both are early morning, 8 or 9 in the morning, my time. So right now it's 5 in the afternoon, my time. So they both are kind of okay, I guess.
Okay. So with that, we get into the air horn, and that sound means it's tech news time. So the top story today, happy Monday, November 1st. Hope you had a great weekend. And the top story is from the Financial Times. They say they have an estimate of Apple's privacy. When Apple started going on about a year ago, they got really, really focused on this whole privacy narrative, and then it's been interesting to see how that's unfolded, because it's also become incredibly clear that it has nothing to do with your privacy. It has to do with them building an ad network. And they don't say that. They don't say that at all. They've made no hint of it, honestly. I mean, really, they've really not even mentioned it. But it's happening. And in fact, they tried to hire Antonio, who used to run the ad network for Facebook. That was one of the first big signs, but there's been several others. And this headline is another, because the Financial Times has done a little calculation, a little estimations, as they call it. And it says that when Apple announced all of this privacy, well, by the way, they don't really mention that anymore ever since the Pegasus zero-day exploits that are all up in your phones. And it turns out there's multiple zero-day exploits all up in your phones, so they can't really go around yelling privacy anymore. However, they do make this special app tracking transparency app, which alerts you, the user, of how much of your data is going to Facebook, Snapchat, YouTube, and Twitter. And you get notifications saying, hey, just so you know, you're sending all of this data that you probably didn't know you were sending to Facebook and Snapchat and YouTube and Twitter from time to time. And it turns out when people get those notifications, many people turn off, and then Apple says, very cheekily, would you like to restrict the data that we send to Facebook, Snapchat, YouTube, or Twitter? And a lot of people say, yes, I would like to restrict that data. It doesn't really do me any good. Why am I giving it to them? Well, you're giving it to them because you clicked the I agree button when you install the app without actually reading what you're given. And Apple knows that. And that's why Apple's giving you now, realizing, you know what, you really gain exactly zero by giving that data to them. And they're not giving you anything for that data. So would you like to restrict it? Because you essentially might actually be intruding on your privacy and to an extent. Facebook would tell you, actually, you do get something. You get much more targeted ads. The ads that you see on Facebook are far more relevant to you than if you don't give us that data. And that's would be just to represent both sides of that argument for a second. But Apple is the one who really wins when you turn off that data to Facebook, Snapchat, YouTube, and Twitter, because, as we just said, Apple's building an ad network. And as you're about to see when I read the numbers from this Financial Times article, when people turn off those ads, it's really hurting Snapchat. Oh boy. And Facebook and Twitter, and to some degree YouTube. And what that does is those advertisers then are not able to send personalized ads on those social networks and their ad platforms. And now they're thinking, oh, well, gee, how can I target people like I used to be able to do on Facebook? And Apple says, come to mama right here. We got you. Now we've got all the data, and we're building the ad network. And that's the real plan going on here. And now you understand how, now that the whole privacy thing has kind of been exposed as a sham anyways, they're still building the ad network anyways, because that's what it was really all about at the end of the day. So this article says, and it gives a breakdown of the data. And it says, for example, the expected revenues is the first chart it shows, and in billions of dollars, it shows that. Sure, I'll try and update it on the top link here so you can watch these charts as I read them. Let's see if this works. There we go, Financial Times.
Yeah,
And
I can PTL for you if you give me the green bean.
Oh, right, sorry. So, the first chart in this article says expected revenue for Q3 and Q4, so the second half of 2021 for Facebook is $62 billion. YouTube's about a quarter of that, with about 15 billion. Twitter with about 4, and Snapchat with about 3. And then it goes into impact of Apple's decision to change iPhone privacy settings, impact on percent of revenue, or impact on revenue as a percentage of their revenue. And it's going to impact Facebook and Snapchat the most, equally at 13.2% of their revenue will go bye-bye, which is a significant hit to their revenue, losing 13.2% of your revenue. And it affects YouTube and Twitter about half as much, about 7.5% for YouTube and Twitter. Still, that's a good amount of your revenue. And then it says which apps are most exposed to Apple's new policy, because if your app is only on mobile, like Snapchat, then you're more exposed. And if you're more based in the browser, like Twitter, you're less exposed. And that's what this next data says. It says that Snapchat gets 98% of its revenue from mobile phones. Facebook gets 90, Twitter gets 50, YouTube gets 70. And then what percentage of those phones is iPhones, which could be different from app to app. And it turns out they're actually very much the same. They're all basically 46%. Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube are all exactly 46% of their mobile users are iPhone. Snapchat, it's a bit less, 42%. So interesting data there, and some significant impact. 13% and 13 and 7.5% respectively for those big apps, and that should affect their stock price, and it kind of has. So next up is, after a 3-day outage, Roblox says it's back online. According to Roblox status page, all versions of the game have been down since October 28th. And Roblox, one of the most popular games in the world, has been down for over a day now. In fact, about 3 days. And a bunch of players thought it had something to do with, believe it or not, Chipotle. Turns out it wasn't. At least Roblox isn't admitting it. But it seems oddly in sync, timing-wise, with the Chipotle promotion, where they were giving away 1 billion burritos or something like that. No, maybe 1 million. 1 billion would be a lot of burritos. I think it's 1 million burritos, something in that ballpark. Anyway, but they're saying no, it's a combination of factors. It's the best answer they have so far. So the next one is from Bloomberg, from Mark Gurman, is he the only one writing tech over there at Bloomberg these days? What that WTF? So Mark says that chip shortage hits Apple at the worst possible time ahead of the holidays, and Meta, meaning Facebook, and Apple are set to be smartwatch and mixed reality headset rivals in 2022. And that part's true. It's completely abundantly obvious that Facebook / Meta, and it's it can't really be more obvious that Apple is going to do the same at some point in 2022. It'll either be at their April, May, June, kind of late spring event where they always do the Worldwide Developer Conference, or it'll be late in the year, like the event we had last week, which is the annual event in early September when they announced the new iPhones. And given how normally Apple doesn't care what the rest of the world does with regard to how quickly it, releases new devices. However, I wonder what JT and the other VR folks think now that Facebook has done an official, buglehorn announcement with the flags waving in the air, quite literally on a hydrofoil surfboard. Facebook is officially announced the opening of the metaverse games with themselves in the pole position and committing $10 billion per year to it, and with an expectation of hiring 10,000 developers from Europe in the next year for the metaverse. And they want this. They want it really, really bad. And they want it really, really bad for a very specific reason, because Facebook was built on top of Apple and Google's ecosystem, of their devices, of their operating systems. So at the end of the day, they're in control. And that's like the first headline that we read, that Apple's now asking its own users, hey, are you sure you want to give this data to Facebook? Because we don't think you really want to give it. Go ahead and just click this button and we'll stop sending that data, because we would prefer that you don't. And that keeps Facebook up at night, that Apple has that control over them. Because look what happened to Epic Games. My goodness. Fortnite is no longer in the Apple App Store. Utterly down. Shut out. Bye-bye. Billions and billions gone. Bye-bye. And Zuckerberg knows that all too well, that if it really came down to it, Apple could yank the chain and pull the plug. So controlling the platform, aka the operating system, aka the device or the hardware, like the phone, the smartphone in your pocket, and especially the operating system, is the holy grail. So they want to have the hardware. They've got the hardware with Oculus. They also want to have the operating system. And I would argue that their version of the metaverse and everything that they're describing is essentially their operating system for VR. And I bet you that Facebook is going to make its metaverse work with, and they want to get a huge head start, because every platform that has existed thus far, let's start with the PCs. The PCs was Windows versus Mac, right? Windows 95 versus Mac OS. And there was a very special difference between those two. Mac really only worked with Mac. There was a brief moment where it worked with PowerPC, and they tried to get it to work with Dell. That never happened. But so Mac only works with Mac, to make it simple. Windows worked with everybody's hardware. If you were building computers, you want an operating system? Hey, that's what we do. We're called Microsoft Windows. We've been building an operating system. That's what we focus on. We don't build our own hardware. You build the hardware. We build the software. Bada boom, bada bing. Let's carpet bomb the whole planet with computers. And they did. And they won. And they kicked Apple's ass handedly. Put them out of business. They were on their deathbed. Apple was on the deathbed. And Bill Gates went to visit Steve Jobs on the company's deathbed and said, you know what, actually, I need you to survive. Don't die, because if you die, then I'm going to get screwed in the monopoly, court cases. Microsoft ended up getting raked over the coals on the power of their kind of monopoly anyways, eventually. But now you know why Bill Gates came to the hospital, metaphorically, to save Steve Jobs, in the ICU, and injected $300 million of cash to make sure Steve kept Apple alive, which he did. And now he's benefiting from Apple's return very significantly. So Apple's returned, and, but they make no mistake, Windows won that battle. Like, that was an ass whooping. Holy cow. So Act 2. Now, guess who's more hungry when the next new platform of the smartphone comes out? Guess who's got a real fire in their belly to win the smartphone battle? Apple, because they got their ass beat in the last battle. So Apple comes out with the iPhone, trudging right along. Microsoft is so fat and lazy, they can't even bring themselves to even get in the race, because they're making so much money from PCs, because they've totally won that battle. And then Google comes in, and Google rips off Apple, drove Steve Jobs ballistic, might have even, took a few months off of his life. It caused him such anguish. And he swore that he would sue them from beyond the grave, and he has done so. And anyway, that battle is playing out today around the world. And in general, Android has a far bigger market share, but they're actually relatively equal in revenue, as we just read in that first article, where Snapchat and all the social networks get about 46% of their revenue from Apple. So it's about equal, that the big apps make about half their money from Apple and they get half their money from Android. And so anyway, so now we're going into the next big battle. Phase 3, platform number 3, the big VR thing is finally about to happen. And who do you think wants to win it this time? Really, really bad. Facebook really wants to win this one. And then Apple's going to be in it. We already know that. It's going to be Facebook and Apple and who knows who else. But here's my main point. Apple's going to do what Apple's always done. Notice what they did on the PCs and the smartphones, and you better believe they're going to do it on their own VRs. They're going to make an operating system for their headsets that is very friendly with their phones and their laptops, but not with other hardware manufacturers. Facebook is going to do what Microsoft and Android did and make their metaverse very interoperable with anyone who wants to make VR headsets, like Vario out of Helsinki, Finland, who makes these gorgeous, incredibly expensive, high-res, super pro deluxe versions of these VR headsets, but they don't really make, well, actually, they do kind of make an operating system, but it doesn't have all the features that Facebook's operating system does, so they might do some kind of partnership. And HTC Vive, which is from Taiwan, doesn't really have that great of an operating system. It's kind of more of an enterprise kind of use case, and Facebook could partner with all of the VR. If VR headsets do become as ubiquitous as smartphones, and that's what the whole vision is here, or at least like laptops, you're going to have at least 5, 6, 7, 8 hardware manufacturers, and Facebook's going to be like, great, we have the best operating system. We will give it to you for free in exchange, for that sweet, juicy data that they are so fond of getting, which is exactly what Android does and what Microsoft did to a degree. Microsoft actually did charge a cash license. They were getting somewhere in the neighborhood of like $50 per pop, but Android doesn't charge a license. They just get all the data, and Facebook is likely to do the same. So it's going to be in that instance. Now, here's why I'm saying all of this, because this article from Mark Gurman at Bloomberg says that the chip shortage hits Apple at the worst possible time ahead of the holidays, and Meta and Apple are set to be smartwatch and mixed reality headset rivals in 2022. And he's right. However, Apple's going to do what they've always done, make it their operating system for themselves. Facebook's going to do what they've always done, make their or make an operating system that allows them to get the juicy, sweet data from all of the other VR headset manufacturers, because they love that sweet, juicy data because they're an ad network. So that's how it's likely to play out, and Apple is very masterful at supply chain warfare, where they will monopolize all the manufacturing in China. It's going to be interesting to watch if they're able to kind of push Facebook around, because Facebook is quite small in the hardware space, where Samsung and Xiaomi and LG to a degree. Samsung's a huge player in hardware, actually, because they make a lot of important components, screens and memory and batteries. And so, yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see that battle between. But, here's my point. The question is Apple going to release their device in late spring at the WWDC, Worldwide Developer Conference, or at the fall event, which is the annual iPhone event? I would wager normally Apple doesn't care what everyone else is doing. They are completely immune and ignore anything anyone else is doing. They do it on their own sweet time when they're ready. This might be the first time ever that they actually feel pressure to get this thing out and do it at the spring event rather than the fall event, because of how hot Zuck is to suck up the entire ecosystem and hire all the best talent in the entire metaverse now, because he's got a window of opportunity between right now and whenever Apple releases their hardware to acquire all of the best VR gaming or VR studios who are making the video games and the productivity apps and the health apps and all of them. and he's got the money to do it. He's sitting on billions and billions of dollars, and he's already said, "I'm going to do it," and he's already doing it. We read a headline yesterday that they just acquired a VR gaming studio, and that's likely to be the first of dozens of VR uh, developing studios that they acquire, and they want to monopolize the whole space, and they might. It's going to be very interesting.
Tyler, may I add
So,
something to
yes,
this?
JT, yes, please do.
Yeah, just to compare and contrast, I think Apple has a huge consumer base, and we know that
Mm-hmm.
consumers are willing to pay ridiculous amount of money for any product
Yep.
they release. But the first product that they are going to release is definitely going to be a high-end one, and they have said that the second one is going to be a sort of a more kind of like iPhone version that anybody can afford. They also have the content, and I think that's very important here because Apple hasn't really talked about anything regarding the metaverse, but they have all the content behind them. They have Apple Plus, they have this whole new content lineup. They even have the software. That's one thing that I've been reading inside the patents that they're trying to make the VR device the next computing device. By bringing the keyboard into the virtual space and fully utilizing Pages and Keynote and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. They also have the products, the peripheral products, whether that's the Mac, the Apple Watch, and all these things can really benefit them, which Facebook is struggling with because one of the things that Facebook has to deal with is putting all that compute power into their device without having sort of a base station. Apple has their Mac to support sort of the processing power and thus keeping
Right.
the headset very light. They also have a game ecosystem which they're able to now compete with Facebook on that end and Oculus. They also have an ecosystem, as I mentioned,
I
not only of
you
Mhm.
that the developer ecosystem is the biggest part.
Yeah, that was my last one. The developer
Gosh,
community and
you
ecosystem.
saved the best for last. That's the most important bit.
And then the other thing is, if you look on LinkedIn, Facebook is upping their system on a chip game SoC. They're doing a full hiring blitz, so they're going to be pushing, their silicon designs towards the M1 style, ARM processors that are very light that can process everything.
Okay, so but you're right. They've got millions of folks who will buy it when it comes out, sight unseen, and they've got millions of developers. And if they make it really easy to make and transition your existing, company into a VR company, into their platform, their operating system, that's going to be, I don't know how easy that would be to do. Like how to, well, we did see that Dropbox and Slack are now have announced they're going to be part of the Facebook metaverse, for lack of a better word. And that's cool, and be really interesting to know how difficult that was to do, because that could be quite substantial, because Facebook has in their Facebook store a few dozen apps. Apple has millions. So that could be a considerable difference.
Tyler, there's one more
Yes.
point I think we haven't discussed it while we were discussing in all these rooms about the metaverse. When we are comparing with the Apple, by all means, like what JT has said, like it's just amazing if you try to actually perceive it. You have a Mac sitting there, or like MacBook Pro or whatever, it's got enough computing power, and then it's going to be light, headgear, and then you are wearing Apple Watch. So, I mean, you have another sensor, like if you want to actually move your hand, you don't need like those controller or something like that. So the ecosystem is there from the hardware perspective. But again, the Apple is so close in terms of the actual, their ecosystem, that there's so much restrictions involved. What Mark was talking about was like pretty much bringing in the masses onto this, and not just like about the actual users, but also the actual builders, and they love open source. So for them to actually, it's not just, let's not discuss about the monetization element at this point in time and the ecosystem element, but in terms of the adoption, like what is going to be out there. So the Facebook with the 2 billion users as compared to like whatever 300 million is, it's well placed to actually bring in those masses into the sphere. So it's just like similar sort of situation what you said, like in terms of having approach of Microsoft, which is like open it up, or Google's approach, open it up like to everyone, and then get masses in, or have a localized, very specified, top of the range, good graphics, 4K, 8K, and then provide that to our user base. So it's that kind of a scenario.
So Dr. Fran just tweeted an image from her Twitter account that I just retweeted, and I pinned it to the top of the room. So if you click on that tweet link, you'll see where she says, the metaverse is already here in parts. Here's a dress I made on sale in the virtual world. And it looks like a very realistic dress. Like that you would, pay money for it, for your avatar. And very interesting. So if Dr. Fran's able to do that, this gets back to my point about normally to make outfits like this would require a certain amount of skill, certain amount of friction, certain amount of hardware you would have to buy and learn how to use. And that all goes bye-bye in the digital space. And that means the barrier between Dr. Fran or anybody, a 10-year-old, and the best designed Tom Ford, one of the Karl Lagerfeld, rest in peace, or whoever the top designer from Comme des Garçons is these days, the actual friction gap between those becomes incredibly narrow. And it's going to be very interesting to see how goods in VR all work out. Anyway, so
can I
the
ask
next
you a
big
question,
article.
Tyler? It's Dr. Fran.
Yes. Yes.
Are you saying that Meta is going to remove the barriers? Because right now, making that dress was not an easy thing.
Yes.
It's so.
Okay.
I used Marvelous Designer, which is an incredible cloth simulating software.
Okay.
And I designed the materials that are on the dress. So, there is a little bit of skill involved.
I don't doubt there is. It looks impressive.
Thank you.
Yeah, I don't imagine I would be able to do it. And the question is, my assumption is, like, as tech has sort of paved a rather well-worn trail of working towards making things easier and easier and easier and easier and easier. And the Unity platform and the Epic platforms, it stuns me how the quality of things that, how much power they're giving to the users on their platforms to create, very compelling content that previously you would assume you would have to be a major Hollywood studio to do some of this stuff. And it's like, that used to take huge groups of people, countless hours and resources. It's truly remarkable.
So I think the real barrier is going to be broken when anybody can do coding, because that's for creatives. The barrier is always coding, and for coders, it's often creation. Which is why you often, in the virtual worlds as they are right now, you often see people pairing up so that you have somebody who's really good at content creation and somebody who can make those things work and do things because they can code.
Yep. Okay, next one up is from Wall Street Journal, that Digital Currency Group raises $700 million at a $10 billion valuation led by SoftBank, and with Google as well, capital G as they're now called. Fantastic name for a Google venture team, capital G. and others participating. Digital Currency Group. So what is Digital Currency Group all about? Digital Currency Group, a cryptocurrency conglomerate that counts the asset management firm Grayscale and media company CoinDesk among its holdings, raises $700 million in an investment round, the second largest in the crypto sector. The funding round valued the company at $10 billion and was led by SoftBank. SoftBank began investing in the sector about 3 months ago. We hadn't made any investments in crypto because we didn't think it was ready, according to SoftBank. Now the firm expects blockchain technology to be the next big leg of the internet and artificial intelligence related technologies. The firm likes DCG's, Digital Currency Group's combination of a portfolio of investments and its own operating companies. It's basically the single best asset that gives us a diversity of exposure to crypto, A to Z, SoftBank says. Okay. Next up is from the Wall Street Journal. They say they have sources that Apple plans a quote-unquote crash detection feature next year for iPhones and watches, which measures a spike in G-forces to detect car accidents and auto-dial 911. Safety feature is also planned for Apple Watches, expected in 2022, according to company documents. And then the question will be, will it alert the attorneys or the authorities that the car accident was due to you playing Candy Crush?
Or will it report the speed you actually crashed at, since it might be a speed limit where you crashed?
Or using your VR headset while trying to drive.
It's called augmented
You know
reality,
that's coming.
my friend, if you need to have your game around you.
Next up, Financial Times. Dell spins off its 81% stake in VMware, creating a $64 billion independent software company. Dell remaining hardware operations have an implied value of $33 billion. Next up from Bloomberg, ByteDance, which is the makers of TikTok, limits staff working hours from 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. on weekdays, becoming one of the first tech companies in China to officially end the 996 culture. So they're now, well, the Chinese folks on the ground had a huge social media campaign a week ago revealing that, yeah, we don't care what the company said. In fact, this is hurting Chinese people. You would assume by reading this article that this helps Chinese folks who were working 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. 6 days a week. And now they're working 10 a.m. to 7 p.m., 3 hours less each day. And it doesn't say anything about Saturdays. And there was a very big social media campaign across China last week saying, no, this doesn't help us. This is hurting us. These reduced official hours, because now these companies are expecting us to work the same 996, but off the clock, unpaid. And I wonder if Bloomberg is even aware of this, because this wouldn't be the first time Bloomberg totally missed the boat on what's going on in China here in tech news around the world. So somebody can dig up those articles from last week of like, now we're working just as much as we used to, but now we're getting paid less because the company's not allowed to tell the government that we're working these same hours.
On the contrary, aren't the American ByteDance employees asked to like work really, really, really long hours so that they can be available for China?
They said that they do work in a way that is simpatico with Beijing. Yeah. Anyway, we'll I'm sure somebody will find some articles about the. It's all in Mandarin. Is kind of the problem, though. But I imagine some of it got into English. The next one is from the Wall Street Journal. Experts say sourcing chips has almost turned into a lottery amid the global chip shortage as wait times ballooned to 22 weeks. What is that? That's about half a year, Jesus Christ. Like, the better part of half of a year. Nearly a year into the crisis, some customers are finding It is taking months more than expected to get needed parts. Next one's from Axios. It says, interest in Facebook, measured by social media interactions per article, declined over 2021, with little mainstream attention for Facebook Papers. And Facebook Papers is the whole coordinated journalistic jihad led by the Wall Street Journal and New York Times and others in all of their absolute ridiculous dumpster diving for quotes from company documents from years ago. Anyway, this one says here it is. The Facebook Papers and whistleblower accounts were a public relations nightmare for Facebook, but so far the company's core stakeholders, which is advertisers, users, and investors, seem unfazed. There's a riddle. Yeah, the stock price wasn't really that affected. The employees aren't really leaving. The users seem unfazed. It's almost like all of this massive dumpster fire. You were dumpster diving and then trying to make a dumpster fire out of the trash you were cherry picked out of the dumpster. And we saw it for what it is. That you're a bunch of click-thirsty tabloids doing jihad journalism. Yeah, we saw that. We knew it. And the market didn't give a shit. And all intelligent people that can have any bit of critical thinking saw it for the sham that it was. And that's why it hasn't really amounted to anything. And kudos to Axios for reporting that. It says, for now, this controversy is mainly of interest to media and lawmakers. Yep, you could even say exclusively. By the numbers, interest in Facebook, measured by social media interactions per published article about the company, has declined over the course of the year, according to the exclusive data. The Facebook Papers haven't produced very big spikes, even temporary ones, in interest about the company. The biggest jumps in engagement on stories about Facebook have come from stories about former President Trump. And it shows on a chart. From March 2021 until now, there were two large spikes in social media interactions about Facebook. The first big spike was when the oversight board upholds Trump's Facebook suspension. The second big spike is when Trump sues Facebook, Twitter, Google CEOs. And then there's nothing even half as big as that, and a couple of other minor ones. And then way down, what appears to not even barely be noticeable on the graph, is Wall Street Journal begins to publish stories from leaked Facebook documents. Google Trends data shows a similar decline in Google searches for Facebook over the past year, and the biggest spike in Google searches is in over a year happened when Facebook experienced an outage last month. The Wall Street Journal's most engaged story from its Facebook investigations, which is headlined, Facebook knows Instagram is toxic for teen girls. Company documents show. Ranked 48th in social media interactions among all the publication's stories since March. It's barely in the top 50 tech stories for the Wall Street Journal's tech stories in 2021. It says the company's recent stock declines have mainly been attributed to Apple's crackdown on targeted ads. The public relations drama seems to have played a minor role. Social and civic groups have called for a nationwide advertising boycott between November 10th, but aside from that, there hasn't been major advertiser backlash in response to the whistleblower drama. That's right. No one gives a dookie-doo about your dumpster diving journalistic jihad. There it is. Axios is saying it out loud. Next up is from Pinterest. Pinterest to launch a shoppable live series called Pinterest TV for shopping. Pinterest TV shopping. Who could have seen this coming? What will they call it? Social commerce? What a surprise. It's coming on November 8th, with weekday episodes airing in its app, featuring some of its top creators. Are going to be doing live stream selling. Whoa, what a fantastic idea. Why didn't I think of that? The series will feature creators and celebrities like Olympic athletes Tom Daley and popular makeup artist Manny Mua. And if you've been listening to Tech News Around the World since we started this little dog and pony show 6 months ago, you'll know I spent the first 3 months of Tech News Around the World saying there's going to be this thing called social commerce of live stream shopping on every app. Pinterest, TikTok, Instagram, Snapchat, they're all doing it. It's even coming to Spotify. They're all doing it. And so we've been watching humorously since I made those predictions and watched the baby steps they're all taking. Here it comes, November 8th, Pinterest doing it live. Next one, from Wired. How payment processors hold the power to decide which products and services can be purchased online, as Stripe bans businesses like tarot card reading. Okay. So if you're an online tarot card reader, you cannot use Stripe to accept credit card payments because your users who got their tarot cards read will call up and cancel the charge because you provided a whole bunch of bahooey as a service. And they're going to say, you know what? They made me pay up front, obviously, and I got my cards read, and it seemed kind of hokey. I don't think this person actually can really tell what's going to happen, so I want to decline the charge. And if they decline too many charges, then Stripe is like, this ain't worth the headache. We're not going to accept tarot card readers anymore.
Did anyone say Miss Cleo?
That happened too, and that's why that whole $1.99 per minute thing actually worked for them, because it was hard to cancel the charges. But rest assured, a lot of people wanted to. So yeah, this article I'm curious. It says the use of terms like fortune teller and psychic are pejorative, demeaning, and discriminatory, as was the suspension of service, according to an attorney and a Wiccan priestess named Phyllis Carrot. Okay, you just piqued my interest here with the words Wiccan priest, attorney, and Wiccan priestess. I wasn't interested. Now I'm very interested. Here we go. Anything with a Wiccan priestess that's right up my alley. So here we go. The use of terms like fortune teller and psychic are pejorative, demeaning, and discriminatory, as with the suspension of service, said attorney and Wiccan priestess Phyllis Carrot about her own struggles with Stripe. The fact that countless Wiccans, witches, and pagans have had their similar problems with Stripe begins to sound not like random algorithmic stupidities, but as a pattern of religious discrimination. Oh, which you are not allowed to do in America. That's illegal. You're not allowed to discriminate on religion, and it looks like you're discriminating against witches. Legal questions around metaphysical services are already complicated, and centuries of misinformation around spirituality and witchcraft make it even more difficult for small specialty businesses to defend themselves.
Is this related to
payment companies
anti-money laundering?
What money laundering?
Do you think that this is related to anti-money laundering because it's hard to prove a meta service? Basically, what I'm getting at is it's possibly a easy conduit for you to just transfer money through Stripe, and so they probably have a limitation on certain businesses that don't have any. I don't know. I'm just speculating now, but I'm wondering why they would select just that group if they're just a payment processor.
It says when payment companies like Stripe actually take the time to look at our work and services, it's clear that we aren't making false promises or trying to scam anyone. In my case, I was able to get my account reactivated simply by contacting the company and talking openly about my work, indicating that, in some capacity, Stripe already recognizes the metaphysical businesses are not inherently high risk. When individual workers and small businesses have to bounce between platforms and payment processors, it can be incredibly difficult to keep income consistent and to hold on to clients. I was booted from Stripe a third time in spring 2021. Yeah, here's the thing. If you get too many chargebacks, you're going to get booted. Stripe doesn't really give a shit if you're a tarot card reader, a palm reader, a Wiccan priestess, or whatnot. What they care about is if you're getting chargebacks. And if you're getting chargebacks, that's a signal that you're not providing good service. So if you've been booted 3 times in the spring of 2021, anyway, when Substack came under fire for their controversial Substack Pro program, I had begun looking into other platforms, hoping to shift my newsletter to a service that offered better protections against hate speech. In setting up an account with Ghost, no pun intended, and integrating my existing Stripe account, I was once again flagged as a restricted business. Right, because Stripe's not stupid. They don't want you using them. And this time, no matter how many emails I sent, I couldn't convince them to let me stay. In spite of never processing a single refund from an unhappy customer, I had only a few days to inform my readers and clients before my account was shut down. 6 months later, I was struggling to make up the income I lost. So it's hard out there for a priestess, y'all.
Just like about 3-4 years ago, like what was the conventional method? I mean, you would fill up the forms, you would apply, it would just hundreds of questions, what you're going to be transacting, what is your product and all that. And, if there was no physical product and it was just a service, it would take you ages to get the authorization on the merchant account. Before all this Square and Stripe and all that like popped up, I mean, literally, it was just, the most difficult part for any SME to get the merchant account to start processing payments. And now, I mean, obviously, it's totally understandable that, if there's going to be chargebacks, then, the processor doesn't want to go through that all hassle. Just literally about 4 or 5 years ago, like if there was no physical product involved and you were just talking about the actual service and legit service, I'm talking about like sometimes like, streaming channels, which is just like, I'm not talking about the main players, but if you were, streaming a channel and you're charging your subscribers for like, $10 a month, the merchant would have a trouble actually authorizing you. So now, I mean, I don't know what they're complaining about. Seriously.
Well, here's what they're complaining about. It says, these companies need to be held accountable, added Sarah Calvarse from the 8th House. If they don't support metaphysical businesses, they need to clearly state that upfront in the onboarding process, not bury it in the fine print of the terms of use. Indeed, if Stripe is unwilling to support metaphysical businesses, they need to be much clearer about it from the jump. But overlooking a growing industry, particularly one with such high number of marginalized people, a lot of minorities in the metaphysical business, and now you're discriminating against minorities. It is short-sighted, discriminatory, and unfair. Instead, Stripe should take the time to expand their understanding of the occult business world and adjust their policies to better separate out the scammers, from the really good palm readers.
But wouldn't this
Granted,
apply
there's
to
scam palm
everything,
readers,
though, right? Like, what would be the expectation on Stripe then to evaluate really anything that's not actually product oriented? And I would say my foundation has used Stripe for a year. I don't know, for probably 6 years, maybe. I don't remember it being egregious at all to apply and get our credentials to use it at the point of sale, whether it was a small fundraiser or a large gala. We process tons of transactions that way, and it's no goods or services, right? You're donating to a nonprofit. But how do they, there's a lot of shady nonprofits out there too.
I think one really good product from this drive would be escrow account, like Upwork style, that people would just like park the money and say, and then once the customer is happy, they can actually release the money. And so there's a much need for something like this to be in a in a retail business. That would be a great service if somebody can actually look into it.
Okay. The next one
Tyler, before that, you want
is.
to make announcement on the survey?
Oh, is it 30 minutes already?
It's
Oh,
55
Jesus, it's
minutes.
1 hour already. My God, that went fast. So, hello, everybody. My name's Tyler. I'm a tech newser, and we want your help. So please click on the little link above my head and answer one very incredibly simple question. What time should we start tech news around the world each day for you? What time would you like to see it start? Please let us know by clicking the link, typing in the number, so that we can better, hopefully, suit your needs. Thank you very much. The next one is from CNBC that in 2018, oh my God, just a warning, trigger warning for myself. These articles trigger me. Articles like these really get me riled up, y'all. Here it is, CNBC. In 2018, Oculus's Jason Rubin, who's not the CEO, who just keep that in mind. He's an employee at Oculus. So it should say in 2018, somebody at Oculus sent a paper to Facebook executives laying the foundation, well, according to the headline, laying the foundation for Meta's ambitions and detailing the need to own the VR market. You ready? Actually, let me crack this one open. Here we go. CNBC. Let's do this one, Cheryl, if we can. You're not gonna watch how ridiculous this is. This is a master class in jihad journalism. Here we go. Let's do this together. Facebook's Meta mission was laid out in a 2018 paper. Now, let's pause right there, because what happened is the journalists at CNBC, Salvador Rodriguez, dove into the dumpster of documents and pulled one out, covered a little bit of yogurt, a little bit of marinara sauce, wiped it off, and said, I think I got something here. I found one. I got a document from 2018 written by somebody who worked at Facebook, and this person named Jason Rubin, and we need to, just because, we're tech news around the world, we're going to find out who the WTF is Jason Rubin from Facebook. Let's find out here what his role was in 2018. Let's see if we we found his LinkedIn profile. So what was his role in 2018? So according to his LinkedIn profile, in 2018, he was a VP of A&R VR partnerships and content, managing the newly combined AR VR partnerships and content teams and expanding my previous VR focus under the Oculus brand to support augmented reality and other future technologies developed at Facebook. So, yep, in 2018, he was in interim head of marketing for Oculus, okay. Then he was a VP of content, but he was a VP of A&R VR, augmented reality, virtual reality partnerships. So he's in charge of partnerships at Oculus when he wrote this article. Keep that in mind, right? He's got senior vice presidents, executive vice presidents, and the CEO all above him at the company. Keep that in mind, because this article doesn't want you to know that. They want you to think he runs the show. He does not. So, back to the article where it says, I remind you, the headline again, Facebook's VR mission, which is Meta, Facebook's Meta mission was laid out in a 2018 paper. No, it was laid out by a dude who is not the boss of the VR company Oculus. And he sure as hell isn't Mark Zuckerberg. So Facebook did not lay out the mission in 2018 because the person who did this is not a general in this army, right? So it goes on to say, and the reason that they thought this article was interesting was because of some of the short little phrases that this person used in their document, such as, we believe that the right way to break through consumer indifference to VR is to deliver what they expect and want from the medium, which is the metaverse. Reads the first slide of a 50-page document outlining a strategy for building a virtual world by some somewhat random dude and a huge company several years ago. The 3-year-old document obtained by CNBC laid out the foundation for the futuristic ambitions of Meta. Zuckerberg told viewers that the company sees the metaverse, and here's another quote. The metaverse is ours to lose, reads one of the first section heads in Rubin's paper. He went on to say that Facebook started thinking about the concept of the metaverse as a way to appeal to general consumers because VR wasn't broadly popular. And then CNBC, who actually is still trying to be journalists, they're a huge TV network, they contacted this guy, Mr. Rubin, to let him know, hey, we found a document of yours in a dumpster somewhere from 2018, and we're actually going to write a story about it. Would you care to comment about that document? And he's like, what document? I've written thousands of documents since 2018. Which one are you talking about? They're like, this one. He says, oh, that one. Oh, well, here's his quote. A lot of people had visions for the metaverse at the time, and there were various documents that were floating around with various opinions, Rubin said. I wanted to get mine out there. That's how we create things here at Facebook. There's a lot of ideas, a lot of people, and they kind of boil up. I'd like to think that some of it was useful. Now, somehow they took that and came up with the headline, Facebook's meta mission was laid out in a 2018 paper. Okay. And that's, now you know we're at the very bottom of the dumpster of documents. This whole Facebook files of all of these thousands and thousands of files that Miss Frances Haugen spent an extra month staying at Facebook so that she could, dig nice and deep into that dumpster and dig out all them files. And now this is what we're able to share. We've now come to the end of the Facebook files. I think we found the last little patch of a spoonful of yogurt in a half-eaten container. I think we found the last bit of valuable headlines we could possibly squeeze out of this lemon. So the next one is from Utah-based Awardco, which makes HR software, raises $65 million. Facebook AI unveils open source tactile tech, including a robot skin and high-resolution robot fingertip sensors to impart a sense of touch to robots. That's cool shit, y'all. That's super crazy cool stuff. So let's read this one. Here, let me, you see this one, Cheryl?
Yes,
there you go. There it is. Facebook is enabling a new generation of touchy-feely robots. The company's AI research lab has created an entire suite of tactile technologies. Without a sense of touch, Frankenstein's monster would never have realized that fire bad, and we would have had an unstoppable reanimated killing machine on our hands. So be thankful for the most underappreciated of your 5 senses, the one that robots may soon themselves enjoy. Facebook's announced on Monday that it had developed a suite of tactile technologies that will impart a sense of touch into robots that the mad doctor could never imagine. But why is Facebook even bothering to look into robotics research at all? Here's a quote. Before I joined Facebook, I was chatting with Mark Zuckerberg and I asked him, is there any area related to AI that you think we shouldn't be working on? Says Jan LeCun, Facebook's chief AI scientist, recalled during a recent press call. And he said, I can't find any good reason for us to work on robotics. So that was the start of our Facebook AI research, that we're not going to work on robotics. Then, after a few years, he continued, it became clear that a lot of interesting progress in AI work is happening in the context of robotics because there's a nexus of where people in AI research are trying to get to the full loop of perception, reasoning, planning, and action, and then getting feedback from the environment. As such, the Facebook AI research called FAIR, F-A-I-R, has centered its tactile technology research on 4 main areas of study: hardware, simulation, processing, and perception. We've already seen FAIR's hardware efforts. A low-cost, compact, high-resolution tactile sensor. The Facebook first announced in 2020, unlike conventional tactile sensors, which typically rely on capacitive or restorative or resistive methods, Digit is actually vision-based. Inside the sensors, there's a camera. There are RGB LEDs placed around the silicon, and then there's the silicon gel. Whenever we touch the silicon on an object, this is going to create shadows or changes in color cues that are then recorded by the caller. And these little sensors cost $15 to produce. Being open source hardware, its production schematics are available to universities and research institutions with fabrication capabilities. It is also available for sale thanks to a partnership with GelSite to researchers who can't build their own. And it shows a robotic hand reaching into a carton of eggs and pulling out a single egg. And it says, in terms of simulation, which allows machine learning systems to train in a virtual environment without the need to collect heaps of real-world hardware data, FAIR has developed Tacto. The system can generate hundreds of frames of realistic high-resolution touch readings per second, as well as simulate vision-based tactile sensors like Digit, so that researchers don't have to spend hours upon hours tapping on sensors to create a compendium of real-world training data. That's fantastic. That's holy shit awesome. Because, as the next paragraph says, today, if you want to use reinforcement learning, for example, to train a car to drive itself, it would have to be done in your, this is really a huge typo, clearly. It would have to be done in your turn environment because it would have to drive for millions of hours, because countless thousands of accidents and destroy itself multiple times before it burns its way around, and even then it probably won't be very reliable. So how is it that humans are capable of learning to drive a car within 10 to 20 hours of practice with hardly any supervision? It's because by the time we turn 16 or 17, we have a pretty good model of the world. We inherently understand the implications of what would happen if we drove a car off a cliff because we have nearly 2 decades of experience with the concept of gravity, as well as that of fucking around and finding out. So how to get machines to learn that model of the world that allows them to predict events and plan what's going to happen as a consequence of their actions is really the crux of the problem.
Yep,
and so that this is where it gets super interesting, because the idea is that people won't have to build everything from the ground up, that you'll be able to have the learning of the AIs is going to become far more human-like. And by the way, the sensors on these robot fingers, the ability to pick up an egg without cracking it, that requires a really keen degree of touch response to know the right amount of sensitivity to lift it without cracking it. And as they show in this demo, and the other amazing thing is the idea that the senses of that robotic hand can be sensed at a distance by somebody on the other side of the planet, and that the robot itself can continue to multiply and learn in a very accelerated way without everyone who wants to build robotic arms having to do everything from the start. Chris? Chris, were you there? Did he just jump out? I thought I heard Chris jump in. Okay, so then hold on one second here. We've got a bunch of people raising hands here. Sharon's back. Okay. Alrighty. So it's a really interesting article, and it goes on for quite a long ways. And they give other really interesting examples, and you can see it at the top of the room there.
Hey, Tyler.
Or on the Twitter account at TNATW.
Jason, how you doing?
Yes.
Man? I remember about 6 months ago I said it's probably more likely that having clones be drivers is easier than developing AI from the ground up that could do this job. And I'm still betting that that's the case. I think it'll happen a lot faster. Specifically for what you just said. If you were to clone a human, you could literally train them in less time to do that same job.
Got some breaking news coming in here from the DMs. Where's Johan?
I'm always here. On your left side.
Okay, sir. All right.
Sweden is a cash non-country. We don't use cash. We use cards. We use a cash app named Swish. And since this morning, all the 6 major banks in Sweden has been experiencing, let's call it, troubles or problems. Which gives by hand that you can't buy a train ticket, you can't buy your cappuccino at your espresso house, you can't do shit, you can't even pay your bills, you can't check your bank accounts, you can't do nothing. And of course, there's a huge outroar about this one, that all the banks fall off the planet at the same time. Apparently, we have some common infrastructure for all these banks. So this will be an interesting end of day when we finally get some results in all the root cause analysis that is progressing right now. Johan Dunn.
Yes, I'll reiterate that. Sweden does not use cash. I've been there for a decade. I've never touched cash. And the banks are down.
I mean, cash exists, right? I mean, so people can go find some cash.
I don't know if it does.
We have cash, but you don't use it. Seriously.
As a matter of fact, there's a lot of business who refuse to accept it. For example, Starbucks and Burger King will refuse to accept it.
McDonald's. The thing is, if you go to a fair,
they have signs. They have signs that say we do not accept cash.
The thing, if you go to a country fair, all of them accept cards, or rather, they prefer Swish nowadays, the Cash App. So the thing is, if I go to a hockey match with the kids, I don't need to bring any cash at all. But in fact, I don't think I've had a cash note in my hand this year at all. No, I haven't.
No, I haven't had any in my hand in a decade there. So this is like the most cashless society on earth. That's just statistically.
Could you explain for the short bus person what exactly technically happened, and then when will it be back online, and then what is the key learning from this?
I don't think they know yet.
The root cause is the thing. The first thing was that it was an attack, and then we start looking at the infrastructure for the central networks in Sweden, and we can't see any attacks. We can't see anything. But the thing is that the banks are not interconnected anymore, or rather, they are, but only momentarily. And the thing is that so yeah, we don't know, and I'm part of trying to actually find out what is actually happening, because we have actually no fucking idea. Sorry for that one.
You heard of Bitcoin that's never been down?
Yeah, it's gonna. Yep.
Hey Tyler, if we have enough cyber attacks and enough of this stuff, cash is going to make a comeback across the world. because people, I mean,
Yep.
I know a lot of people, including myself, who always keep some cash around just in case of a situation like this.
What about international payments and wire
I'm also
transfers and business to business? Is that all down too? Like, I mean, that's the
Yes, the
kind of
business
keeps
to
the
So
business
economy
this
is
is
what.
going.
one major attack on the fiat system.
Yeah, in Sweden right now, you can't. I can't pay my company's bills. I can't pay for my ticket. I can't do just anything. I can't even log on to the Handelsbanken, which is one of the major business banks. It's not possible to actually. You reach the homepage, but you can't use the identification, the bank ID we use towards them. We can't
So
use it.
let's game this out. What happens? One day, 1 week, 1 month into that. I mean, how long before the economy just completely breaks down?
I would guess that everybody is just still in the boat. I have no idea how it goes for the stock exchange. I know someone on stage that perhaps could take a peek at that to see if there are any, because that's apparently Sachs, which is the stocks are apparently still running. But the thing is here that this might be something that gives us ahead a couple of weeks ahead. And as
This
usual,
sounds like a
it's always
rehearsal.
be someone always someone to blame in the end round.
Yeah, the transportation and the food will be the first. I mean, water will. Well, no, Sweden can drink tap water all day long. In fact, it's better than most bottled water in most countries. But so they've got plenty of water. They can use the home heating systems. That's not a problem. The purchasing of food is going to be, and the transportation is going to be the first two major burdens.
Apparently, I just looked at the one of the major gasoline stations, and they say that they accept all cards for now, but only for a limited amount of money. 400 kronas is what they accept because they can't check it.
The trains and the buses would let everyone go for free. Like that's
already
fairly
happening
obvious.
here in Gothenburg, at least.
Yeah, they wouldn't. The government would say let everyone ride the buses and trains for free, like no questions asked, and that would happen in a heart. That would happen instantly. So the transportation isn't that big of an issue. It would really come down to food. And by the way, you can get anywhere in Sweden on the public transportation. They build the cities around the public transportation. So mobility wouldn't be an issue. It's really just the food that would really be the
It's
issue.
going to be very interesting to watch how Sweden handles this because I think they would handle it way better than a lot of other countries that aren't even fully cashless. So is this
yeah,
a
well,
rehearsal?
yeah.
Just kind of interesting. Because there's if we look at the pattern of things that have gone on from the utility hits that we've taken here and this, I'm just looking for international patterns, not trying to come up with a conspiracy, just looking at international patterns and figure out how to vest off of that. Thank you.
Yeah, if this goes really bad, I will speak Russian by Friday.
Na zdrowie.
Yeah.
Okay. How do you say "make yourself at home" in Sweden, in Russian? So, yeah. The next article is a company called Slash Next, which offers AI-driven anti-phishing services for enterprise. Raises $26 million. India-based grocery delivery Zepto emerges from stealth with $60 million. YouTube's mistaken deletion of a channel belonging to UK news outlet Novaria Media draws criticism over the company's power as a content regulator. And here you have the New York Times criticizing YouTube for removing content. And that's confusing because generally it's the New York Times saying YouTube doesn't remove enough content from the right, namely Breitbart Media. And here YouTube has removed Novara Media, and the headline from the New York Times is how a mistake by YouTube shows its power over media. Novara, a London news group, fell victim to YouTube's opaque and sometimes arbitrary enforcement of its rules. Which we hate when it's a left-leaning media, but boy, we still want them to cancel all of those right media channels because, can't have that freedom of speech thing happening in the US of A. So, not appearing to be too evenly keeled there, New York Times. The next one is that Apple's $19 polishing cloth has become its most back-ordered new product with shipments delayed until January. And Beijing-based Hughes, a SaaS provider that helps e-commerce businesses manage orders and more, raises $312 million from SoftBank. And so a quick refresh to see a review of the new $200 Beats Fit Pros from The Verge says that it's comfortable with very good active noise cancellation and transparency mode, but no wireless charging and little Android support. And we covered two more quick ones here from VentureBeat. When I Work, which is the company which helps businesses manage shift scheduling, timesheets, and more, it raises $200 million. And Mosaic, which makes software to automate construction planning, raises $44 million. And there you go. Now we get into the tweets. Before we get into the tweets, we'll wait till the next top of the hour to bring the link back. So, Evan, what's this new one you just sent in about a high-speed laser writing method?
Yeah, this new data storage, technology that's been invented. 500 terabytes of data on a small glass disk. So just amazing the advances happening in data storage, which are needed, for all that juicy data.
Yes, high-speed laser writing method could pack 500 terabytes of data into a CD-sized glass disk. Which is, why not just call it a glass CD?
It's
I
like
mean, if it's
it's a small
CD-sized.
CD-ROM, like a mini CD-ROM looking thing. So yeah, I guess CD-ROMs are
500 terabyte CD. That's a lot of
You say
data.
mini? Wasn't it like a mini CD, little small ones though?
It's a new format, but yeah, it's like it looks like a mini CD-ROM.
They're talking about voxels, so it looks like they're writing in 3D, which is, I think, probably the major breakthrough. They're writing in layers, not just flat.
Unless somebody demonstrates smearing it in jam and rubbing it off, then I'm not interested.
So Evan has this other one up, ironically, about Sweden. Sweden launches green catamaran to cut shipping emissions. And looking at the photo, which you can see above my head, it looks like it's got a ton of solar panels on the top of it. That would be incredibly cool.
Sweden had the other design, which was basically a container ship with sails. Remember that one a few months ago? Sweden seems to be really ramping up its nautical engineering trucks.
You have no idea. Well, not only that, but just in terms of green tech, Sweden, without a doubt, is a leader in green tech. We have a massive, it's a miniature campus for startup entrepreneurs and investors exclusively for green tech called Norwen, which is the Swedish word for the northern lights or aurora borealis. It's a gorgeous facility, and it was started by a friend of mine who left. He was one of the co-founders of Klarna, Nicholas, and Nicholas left as a co-founder of Klarna because he had made more money than he could ever spend in his lifetime, and he wanted to do Norwen because he thought we need to have more entrepreneurs solving the real important problems. So he built this gorgeous miniature campus for them, and they're there. And that's the whole the home of the ecosystem for green tech. And now they built another one in, I want to say Nairobi or somewhere near Nairobi. Jolly?
Hey,
Something like that.
Tyler, just real quick. Wait, hold on.
So
500 terabyte in a mini glass disk size thing. I know we just discussed it, but that's a big game changer when it comes to phones. If that thing could be installed in a phone, I mean, I'm looking at my phone right now. A small disk size, 500 terabytes in your phone.
It's
It's a game.
it's probably
yeah,
it's
it
probably
would depend on the
write-once
read-write
storage. I
speed, though.
suspect. I haven't read it properly yet, but I suspect it's write-once
Yeah.
archival style.
The people laughed at Apple for having that 1 terabyte option,
That's right.
but this is obviously a game changer.
So the world's first emission-free, high-speed catamaran with an integrated battery and hydrogen-based fuel cell system is planned for commercial traffic in Stockholm. It's called eChandia. Has signed an agreement to supply the world's first emission-free high-speed catamaran for Green City Ferries. The installation will take place in the second half of 2022, and the agreement is worth approximately $1.6 million.
So you could go to sea in this thing, grow your own food, and never come back to port. Be a fun use case.
And it's they're from the north of Stockholm. Okay, ships are responsible for roughly 3% of global CO2. If you look at public transport in Stockholm, the fleet of vessels accounts for around 5% of energy consumption, but around 50% of carbon dioxide emissions annually, according to some Stockholm agency. Green City Ferries' goal is to switch to emission-free and fast waterborne transport in the world's cities. Their plan starts in Stockholm with the support of the European Union. Before initializing final production stages, Green City Ferries will secure additional external financing. Magnus Eriksson, the CEO, says Sweden has been lagging behind internationally when it comes to electrifying shipping, but now the pace is increasing here as well. We are proud to be part of this project and not only contributes to reducing emissions from Stockholm's waterborne local transport, but is also the first in the world with an emission-free high-speed catamaran. The ferry will be equipped with an integrated system with both batteries and hydrogen, which is significantly more energy efficient compared to solutions with separate systems. It's a very cool looking catamaran. Okay, thank you for that one, Evan. And so the next one is from Lucast. That tech. Let me share this with you in the top of the room here, and hopefully the image will come up. Wouldn't this be nice? It's just a link, unfortunately. It says DJI, the maker of drones, a Chinese company that makes drones. DJ Action 2 is their new GoPro competitor, and it's very much like a GoPro, but about half the size of a GoPro. And the DJ Action 2 versus GoPro Hero 10 Black. Which is the best camera for you? How do DJI and GoPro's latest action cameras compare? Well, right off the top, the DJ Action 2 looks to have a much bigger lens and a much smaller body.
And weighs
and
a
cheaper.
fraction. It's 56 kilograms to GoPro's 156 or 176 kilograms.
So it'll likely, for anyone who wants to, go surfing, put it on a drone, all kinds of things, hiking, put it on your hat, as like a car camera or a motorcycle camera on your helmet.
GoPro really needs some competition in this arena, by the way. They've dominated for so long now. A lot of their the latest version 10, they've finally updated some of the chips that have been around, the same chips since version 6. Their software is buggy as hell, their cloud storage is atrocious and has a 500 kilobyte upload limit. It's extremely slow. And they've got away with a lot of these in the overpricing, the overheating issues, the laggy OS on the cameras, because there's no competition, at least none that are priced competitively. So crossing my fingers for this.
Okay, and Professor Ossoff sends in an article about a systematic review and meta-analysis. Data sets provide strong evidence that low vitamin D is a predictor of COVID-19 mortality risk and correlates inversely with vitamin status. He says smart people get your vitamin D booster dose from your doctor. Or it could be easier than that. You just take supplements. They're quite readily available. And speaking of Sweden and transportation, the Jetson 1, a personal electric aerial vehicle that anyone can own and fly if you have $92,000, can fly up to 1,500 meters high. That's crazy high for a drone, especially one you can sit in. And it's more than 60 miles per hour for 20 minutes. That's the device I've been waiting for right there. I was actually emailing with them because they're from Stockholm, but he won't be able to join my event, unfortunately. The next one is Trump's $300 million SPAC deal may have skirted security laws. Just days after Donald Trump left the White House, two former contestants on his reality show, The Apprentice, approached him with a pitch. Wes Moss and Andy Litinsky wanted to create a conservative media outlet. Mr. Trump was taken with the idea, but he had to figure out how to pay for it. This month, the former president found a way. He agreed to merge his social media venture with what's known as a SPAC. The result is that Mr. Trump, largely shut out of the mainstream financial industry because of his history of bankruptcies and loan defaults, secured nearly $300 million in funding for his new business. To get the deal done, Trump ventured into an unregulated and sometimes shadowy corner of Wall Street, working with an unlikely cast of characters, the former Apprentice contestants, a small Chinese investment firm, and a little-known Miami banker named Patrick Orlando. Mr. Orlando had been discussing the deal with Trump since at least March, according to people familiar with the talks and a confidential investor presentation reviewed by the New York Times. That was well before his SPAC, Digital World Acquisition, made its debut on the NASDAQ stock exchange last month. In doing so, Mr. Orlando's SPAC may have skirted securities laws and stock exchange rules, lawyers said. SPACs sell their shares to investors through an initial public offering and then find a private company with which to merge. Because SPACs are empty vessels, stock exchanges allow them to list their shares without disclosing much financial information, but that creates opportunities for SPACs to serve as backdoor vehicles for companies to go public without receiving the kind of investor scrutiny they would in traditional listings. To prevent that, SPACs aren't supposed to have a merger planned at the time of their IPO. Lawyers and industry officials said that talks between Mr. Orlando and Mr. Trump, or their associates consequently, could draw scrutiny from the SEC. Another issue is that Digital World Securities filings repeatedly stated that the company and its executives had not engaged in any substantive discussions, directly or indirectly, with a target company, even though Mr. Orlando had been in discussions with Mr. Trump. Oh, you got yourself in a little Chinese handcuffs here. Given the politically fraught nature of the deal with Mr. Trump, securities lawyers said that Digital World's lack of disclosure around those conversations would be considered an omission of material information. Financial markets are premised on trust, says Mike Stegmoller, a finance professor at Baylor University who studies SPACs. If these disclosures are not true, no one wants to participate in the markets that aren't fair. Lawyers for Trump Media and Technology Group didn't respond to requests for comment. A spokesperson for Mr. Trump referred questions to the company, whose representatives include Mr. Litinsky and Mr. Moss, did not return requests for comments. Yeah, it looks like they could be in some doo-doo. They might. I wonder I wonder if they might go so far as to shut it down. That would be wild. Okay. The next one is from Shirok, that LinkedIn reports crypto and blockchain job listings have surged 615%. The LinkedIn said that financial services firms were expected to hire more than 3 times as many staff with experience in digital assets than last year. 6x. That's a boom. And what else do we got here? Oh, here's the next one from Shirok. Signal, which is a app for people to have end-to-end encrypted conversations. Beautiful app, by the way. Highly recommended. This is a really interesting case that's developing. A grand jury subpoena for Signal user data from the Central District of California. Signal's, here's the problem. The grand jury subpoena is asking for, Signal doesn't have. They never collected from their users. So Signal is writing a blog post. Here it is. I'll link it to the top of the room for your convenience. And it says, Signal still knows nothing about you, but inexplicably the government continues to ask. Because everything in Signal is end-to-end encrypted by default, the broad set of personal information that is typically easy to retrieve in other apps simply doesn't exist on Signal's servers. Once again, this subpoena requested a wide variety of information we don't have, including the target's name, address, correspondence, contacts, groups, calls. As usual, we couldn't provide any of that. It's impossible to turn over data that we never had access to in the first place. Signal doesn't have access to your messages, your chat list, your groups, your contacts, your stickers, your profile name or avatar, or even the GIFs you search for. As a result, our response to the subpoena will look familiar. It's the same set of account and subscriber information that we can provide, which is the Unix timestamps. Forget the word Unix there, just timestamps for when each account was created and the date that each account last connected to Signal to use the service. That's it. They only have 2 pieces of data. When the account was made, they don't even know the name of it, and when it was last active. That's it. We like to thank the ACLU for their untiring and enduring assistance, particularly our council. We also like to thank everyone who uses Signal. Our commitment to you remains unchanged.
This isn't the first time, by the way. They've
and then they show the letter.
Different districts that have come after them, different states that have come after them, and they've basically given the same response every time. Look, we keep a randomized hash of the user, the ID, and then a couple of sort of timestamp metadatas, but that's it. And then what's interesting in that subpoena, if you just go into it, I mean, interesting to me because I've never really gone through your subpoena before, but just the language that was used by the FBI operative that was issuing it, where they were saying that we'd like any accounts that have this name or have this date of birth or have this telephone number, which is a very vague sort of set of filters by which to request data for in the first place, and then ending it with, we would like you to tell nobody about this, because if you release the fact that if you release information about the existence of this subpoena, it will affect the course of justice. So, basically saying at the end there, are you a patriot? You should keep this hush hush between us, the fact that we're trying to get this set of confidential data.
So the next one is from Poppy, that Rome and Nice in France and Venice and other airports join forces to build electric vertical takeoff and landing airports called voloports or vertiports. A new company called Urban Blue has been launched by airports in Rome, Nice, Venice, and Bologna to accelerate electric vertical takeoff and landing infrastructures internationally. Bring it on. Let's do this. Flying cars, everybody. The next one is also about Venice. And you might need these vertical takeoff and landings vehicles sooner than you think, because sea level rise will kill Venice by 2100. So by the end of this century, thus 79 years from now, sea level rise will kill Venice. Scientists, historians, and writers are lobbying Mario Draghi to create a new authority to protect the city from rising waters. And David Crace sends in this one, that CrossFit to launch fully digital primary care service. The fitness company CrossFit will join other startups in offering direct-to-consumer virtual care services, in addition to precision health and preventative medicine. Here it comes. Startups getting into health.
An
digital health.
thing about Venice, I was occupied, I couldn't dive in there. The thing is that they have actually found a Roman road that is 2,000 years old in the bay just outside of Venice. And the depth to the road is 11 meters. So 2.5 years ago, the bay where you have all these cruise ships ending up nowadays, it was a road going across there, and 2,500 years in the long perspective is not such a long time. But so this with the sea crawling upwards, something have been going on for quite a while. Johan Dunn.
Okay, next up, leaked photos of Facebook's Meta smartwatch. Shows camera notch, retweeting it to the Twitter account, and now putting it at the top of the room. Here we go. There it goes. Let's hope it goes through. There's the link to Engadget. Let's see what this thing looks like. There it is. Looks like an Apple Watch with a flat screen, but rounded corners. In addition to having rounded corners and a camera, the smartwatch appears to have stainless steel casing and detachable straps. According to Bloomberg, Meta is hoping to launch a smartwatch as early as 2022, but nothing has been finalized yet. Further, Facebook's parent company is reportedly already working on 3 generations of products that will be released at different times. Okay, thank you for that one. And Lucas shares this one, that China's new quantum computer has 1 million times the power of Google's quantum computer. Researchers in China claim to have created a quantum computer that sorely outclasses Google's Sycamore. But there's far to go before it hits markets. And, sorry about that. The next one is from Monica, that WhatsApp is offering 51 rupees. How much is 51 rupees to USD? It's about 68 cents. Okay. So WhatsApp is offering about 68 cents cash back as it takes on Google Pay and others in India. And that's interesting. As predicted by me in this room, WhatsApp, the chat app, is now becoming a fintech app. They want to compete with Google Pay in India. This feature is currently available to WhatsApp beta users on Android. You can get the cash back up to 5 times. And by sending money to different contacts, WhatsApp has started offering the cash back with no limit on the amount sent. This feature is currently available to WhatsApp beta users on Android. So, just for those who don't know, this is because WhatsApp is one of the world's biggest communication apps. And their competitor in China, called WeChat, which with a similar kind of name and a similar kind of logo, has made the transition from a messaging app to a finance app. In fact, it's the main way people pay for things in China, to each other or even to businesses, and for transferring of money and whatnot. And then once you have that financial layer built into the app, then you can start to do all kinds of crazy cool shit, like adding on Uber, like a ride sharing, and buying of anything, buying and selling of all kinds of stuff, e-commerce, you name it, because you have the finance built right into the app. And so then the app becomes what's called a super app, and then the app becomes a platform, and then the app says, hey, Uber, we have tons of users over here on WhatsApp, billions. Why don't you plug into our billions of users and allow them, when they're chatting with somebody, Do you want to meet for lunch? Maybe we could put a little thing there that says, you could book a ride right here, right now on Uber. And how about we split that money, y'all? And you've always wondered, didn't you, how WhatsApp was going to make money? And now you know. They're going to become a super app platform just like their competitor in China did years ago. So the next one is Squid Game cryptocurrency scammers make off with $2.1 million. The Squid Coin scam was covered uncritically by mainstream news outlets. The anonymous hucksters behind the Squid Game cryptocurrency have officially pulled the rug on the project, making off with $2.1 million. Remember on Friday morning when Gizmodo told you it was an obvious scam? It was only obvious because investors could purchase the crypto but couldn't sell it. But plenty of people didn't get the warning in time. The Squid cryptocurrency peaked at a price of $2,861 before plummeting to zero, according to CoinMarketCap. This kind of theft, commonly called a rug pull by crypto investors, happens when the creators of the crypto quickly cash out their coins for real money, draining the liquidity pool from the exchange.
People really haven't studied the Dutch tulip debacle, right?
Squid CryptoCoin was launched just last week and included plenty of red flags, including a 3-week-old website filled with bizarre spellings and grammatical errors. The website, hosted at squidgame.cash, has disappeared, along with every other social media presence set up by the scammers. You can see an archived version of the website here. Other red flags included the fact that Squid's Telegram channel, set up by the unknown scammers, didn't allow comments from outsiders, and the Twitter account made it impossible for anyone to reply to posts. But the biggest red flag was that no one who purchased the coin was able to sell. That didn't stop mainstream news outlets like BBC, Yahoo News, Business Insider, Fortune, and CNBC from running headlines about how the new Squid Game cryptocurrency had soared by 83,000% over just a few days. This is just the latest example of scammers utilizing pop culture to get media attention. A similar rug pull occurred earlier this month with Mando, a cryptocurrency that used images of Disney Plus's Mandalorian TV show without permission from Disney. Does this mean that investors have finally learned their lesson and won't invest in shady cryptocurrency projects anymore? Hell no, that seems unlikely. Scam artists love the crypto space because it's incredibly difficult to differentiate the scammers from someone who's earnestly trying to create a legitimate cryptocurrency, perhaps because the idea of making your own currency is inherently fraudulent.
Okay, then they have to pay some lessons fee for stupidity then.
I wouldn't agree that making your own crypto is inherently fraudulent. I mean, I have my own crypto, so
It does. People do it without fraudulent intention, but people join MLM marketing schemes without fraudulent intention. But the system as a whole, if you stand back from it, is fundamentally going to make some people rich now at the expense of thousands or millions of people losing a little bit in the future.
It's gambling and speculation.
So this is another example of protecting, do we have to protect people from themselves? Because how the system worked on the Squid Coin was perfectly laid out in the slightly dodgy white paper, but it did say in there that you can't directly sell the coins. Instead, it was an extremely complex system of where you had to purchase and play for another token called marbles, and then you had to go through a series of challenges to win enough marbles to then trade into a system where you could then cash out any coins that you had invested in. And it was just a really weird system that actually involved you investing a huge amount of coin to buy the Squid Coin to then try and win marbles so that you could then trade this marble token back into the Squid Coin. And if you worked it out, it was very similar. The game in the arcades where you have the hand that comes down to pick up a toy, and that you can go and buy that from Amazon for just like 50 cents a dollar, but you're going to stand there and spend like £10-15 to grab it because your daughter's screaming.
The dopamine.
It was that kind of system, yeah, exactly. But it was always going to go bad. But the point is, the FOMO was there, and people are actually, if you look at the transactions, people are still buying into it.
It's like I said, just look back at the Dutch tulip craze, and this really mirrors that right now. Like, it's just
But
lots of dogpiling
how did
in.
the tulip craze end? I mean, I know the story, but like what brought it all tumbling
I
down, Chris?
think it was just untenable to keep having these values go up for things that were essentially useless.
We also had this last week with what was it? It was Funware, the SPAC, one of the SPACs that was touted to be in league, potentially in league with Trump for his new social media platform, and that skyrocketed from something like $0.50 or whatever all the way up to $20, and then back down again in, I don't know, like a 24, 48-hour period, and crashed down to, I don't know what it's at now, $2 or something like that. But the point is, because these apps like Robinhood and Trading 212 and Binance and Coinbase and that kind of thing are really easy to use for people who don't know what they're doing and don't want to take the time to do DD, you're going to have this system where there are a few people who do know how to manipulate it and use it, making the money off of people who are just chasing the FOMO train.
Okay, speaking of crypto, the next one's from Shirok, that the Oculus CTO says that it's unlikely that Meta will totally embrace crypto. Facebook's rebrand signals its firm commitment to driving innovation in the metaverse, but it probably won't be totally crypto friendly. Right, I think it'll be Facebook coin friendly. And if we know anything about Facebook, I think that's a safe bet. But that could also be its weakness in a way. The next one is from The Economist, that South Koreans are bemused by the global success of Squid Game, yet its theme of social injustice is a globally appealing one. When Squid Game appeared on Netflix in mid-September, many South Korean reviewers were underwhelmed by the homegrown survival drama. They found the characters cliched, the plot unconvincing, and violence gratuitous. The whole thing, they complained, was too similar to older films such as Japanese Battle Royale, which, by the way, had the kids playing red light, green light, and being killed if they, didn't follow the rules, precisely as this, as Squid Game does. Quite interesting, and adding nothing new to the survival genre, with notwithstanding the striking set design and star-studded cast. Even though every genre has its cliches, too much in Squid Game reminds you of every other movie you've ever seen, complained one critic. Squid Game, which takes its name from the common Korean schoolyard game, follows a group of debt-ridden losers, blah, blah, blah. Squid Game has taken the world by storm. It's currently the most streamed show on Netflix. The brutality of the competition has also rung true for ordinary South Koreans struggling with unaffordable housing and sluggish labor market. Politicians have been referring to the show when attacking opponents. Yet after a brief spell at the top of the Korean Netflix charts, Squid Game has been overtaken by Hometown Cha-Cha-Cha, another K-drama. The global craze has prompted bemusement in South Korea. Nobody around me understands the global hype, and neither do I, says In Young, a 26-year-old from Seoul, who stopped watching after a couple of episodes because it disturbed her to see her childhood games depicted as brutal struggle for survival. One Korean critic speculates that the combination of violent entertainment with a very on-trend critique of capitalism explains the show's appeal to Western audiences who are used to such themes from American productions such as The Hunger Games, set in dystopian world of grave social injustice. Okay.
Hey, Tyler, I thought you'd be
So I
curious.
tweeted
I've
that
been
one
searching
out.
Google and a bunch of other
And
things to try to find any current story on this situation in Sweden with the payment systems not working. I couldn't find one. I'm sure it's probably in the Swedish newspaper. So you actually have real
yep.
breaking news here. And believe it or not, the number one banking story, in fact, the top story in the Wall Street Journal right now, is about the CEO of Barclays resigning because of his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. But nobody's talking about the payment system in Sweden going now, which is amazing.
Yeah, the thing is that we know the mainstream media in Sweden doesn't work. So sorry, yeah, you won't find anything about it. It's being squelched. I can tweet out a few Swedish links, but they are all in Swedish, and they are on the major newspapers as well. But it doesn't lift the severity of the thing at hand, and this is just usual.
Why doesn't
Send
it
me.
appear on Twitter? Does it appear on Twitter?
Just saying. Just
It
saying.
might in Swedish.
Where's Charles anyway, Tyler? Have you heard from him at all?
About a week ago, we had an email thread together on a totally unrelated thing. I'm trying to. I can go to some of the big Swedish websites here. Let's see. Let's go to Break It.
Aftonbladet doesn't
Let's
have it.
see if they
You
have
need
it.
to go to Svenska Dagbladet, for example.
Okay.
In the meantime, please click on the link on top to do the survey on when you think tech news around the world should start. You have two choices because we have two sessions.
I don't even see it on SVD.
I will find it for you. Give a moment.
Okay. So the link at the top of the room is a very quick survey. We ask you to help us pick the best time to do tech news around the world now that the time zones are or the seasonal clocks are changing. Yesterday in Europe and UK, and on Sunday in the US. So it's a perfect opportunity to reevaluate when might be ideal rather than guess, let's do it in the most democratic way possible. So we would love your input in helping us decide the best time to do the show.
Quick check.
Well, let's
I bet
see.
it's 7 to 7.
Yes, nearly. There's currently 177 responses, and quite out in front is, for the first choice, many people's first choice is 7 a.m. UK time.
Is that the same or?
And in second place is 2 p.m.
which is 7 Pacific.
UK time. Which is 7 Pacific, right? And then on the second choice, because that's for everybody's first choice. On the second choice, again, you've got 7 a.m. UK time in the lead. And second place would be 3 p. Oh, it just jumped up a lot. And it's almost going to go to first place. It will go to first place if we let everyone in this room vote right now, because now it's up to 183 votes. So it looks like 3 p.m. UK time,
8.
which is what Pacific?
8's a delightful hour, Tyler, especially when we're up so late in Europe.
8's good.
So 8 a.m. So we could do 8 a.m., 7 a.m. UK, 8 a.m. Pacific.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Right? That could work. And then the question is, between the two, which one, if we only could do it once a day? So that would go back to the voting on the first choice. And currently, there's a lot more folks voting from the UK when we met earlier today in the UK time zone, or the European time zone, and now we're more in the American time zone. So we need to know, should we do it at 7 a.m. UK? If we only do it once a day, should we do it at 7 a.m. UK or 2 p.m. UK, which is what again, Chris? 7 a.m. Pacific. And the score is basically 45 to 28 currently. Oh, and we're up to 193 responses already. So, next article. Well, let's keep the survey going just a little bit longer because there's clearly a lot of people figuring out their time zones at the moment. we'll keep that link there while I read this next article from Quartz, which says that chip makers are threatening to scrap future U.S. factories if they don't get generous tax breaks. And Intel, Samsung, and TSMC have all threatened to pull the plug on their U.S. factory plans unless government subsidies are on the table. Company executives claim that if they don't get a rich package of incentives and tax breaks, they will build their semiconductor factories elsewhere, effectively ending American ambitions to return chip manufacturing to its shores after ceding the bulk of the market to Taiwan in the 90s. Harvard Business School professor Willie Shih, who studies semiconductor supply chains, calls those threats hot air. Regardless of what the U.S. government offers, the company's manufacturers are almost certain to follow through on their plans to build factories in the U.S. to take advantage of the country's skilled workforce and to be close to specialized U.S. equipment manufacturers that churn out many of the tools needed to make cutting-edge semiconductors. But if they can get government subsidies, are they going to try to do it? He said, "You bet." Sports teams' owners have mastered the art of playing governments against another to extract a deal or a new stadium. Local governments routinely participate in extravagant races to the bottom to court sports teams, offering hundreds of millions of dollars in taxpayer funding to renovate or build stadiums. No matter where the sports teams wind up, they enjoy the benefit of gleaming new facilities at a steep discount. Local residents footing the bill rarely see much of an economic benefit in return. Other industries follow the same playbook. Witness Amazon's drawn-out HQ2 sweepstakes. Now chip makers are now jockeying. That's what a weird grammar. Now chip makers are now jockeying for position after their product has become a vital national asset in short supply. Intel CEO is leading the lobbying by embarking on a global sales trip, meeting with political leaders in the US, EU, Germany, France, the Netherlands, and Italy to discuss the possibility of opening a new semiconductor plant in their jurisdictions. In return, he's requesting subsidies for Intel's next plant. Never let a good crisis go to waste, Gesslinger told the Wall Street Journal to negotiate subsidies. TSMC made similar threats before breaking ground on a new $12 billion plant in Arizona, which it intends to fund in part with money from the CHIPS Act. Samsung has made its own plans for a new cutting-edge $17 billion factory in the U.S. contingent on subsidies. Okay, so last call here. Actually, we'll do it again in an hour to remind folks to do the survey at the top of the room to help us pick. We're up to 210 responses. And
half hour. Dr.
Oh boy.
Francis in half hour.
Oh, so in a half hour, we're ending this room. So in a half hour, we will do the last call for submissions here. But it's wow, the 2 p.m. UK which is 7 a.m. Pacific, is at this rate might surpass 7 a.m. UK, and this is the difficult choice.
Also, Alexandra has a show at 10:30 today. She wanted us to remind the room about.
Yes,
I think she's
that will
busy
be
right now.
after Dr. Francine's room.
Wow, it's really and this is going to end up being neck and neck between the EU audience and the American audience, where
and Tyler,
yeah,
it's on our honor to vote once, right?
Yeah. Okay. So, but that's why. And by the way, because we do this twice per day, and the rooms are fairly equal in sizes. Where right now we're at about 450 people in this room. We usually have that's in that same ballpark when we meet in the other time zone, which is the UK morning time zone. And maybe we got to keep doing both.
Hey, Tyler,
yes.
Do you even know? You probably don't. What's the distribution of the listeners? Just from the United States between the East Coast and West Coast, because I was just going to send you something. I mean, even the current times, I mean, are not convenient for people on the East Coast, because either it's like in the middle of the night on the East Coast, or it's like in the middle of their kind of business day on the East Coast. So I don't know if you've ever looked at that, but that's you know.
It's true. I do have a breakdown. So because I send out the audio through Anchor, to podcasting apps. So it's on Google Podcasting and Spotify and on all those apps. And Anchor gives me all the data. And it tells me within the US, here's the breakdown. It has all the breakdown per country. And so the leading country is the US with 53% of listeners. Canada's 13%. And
Jeopardy time.
okay, here we go. Tech News Jeopardy. Who's listening to tech news around the world? Podcasts in podcast style. First is US with 53%. Canada is second with 13%. Who is third? And fourth and fifth?
UK.
Sweden.
Sweden.
Sweden is fourth with 5%. Who is third?
Latin America.
Or Belgium.
Taiwan.
India.
Africa?
Canada.
Canada's second,
India.
13%. Third is Norway with 6%. Followed by Taiwan at 4%, Germany with 3%, India with 3%, New Zealand with 3%, UK with 2%, Thailand with 1%. That might be me. And
But you don't know the breakup
Taiwan,
from, but
Taiwan
you
is
don't know the
with you.
U.S. breakup though, right? You
I
don't know
do,
how the U.S.
I do know the US breakup. Here we go. Which state is winning? California is first with 27%, followed by Virginia with 23%, followed by New York with 11%, and Tennessee with 6%. And so...
What? Tennessee.
We're out here, y'all.
we be doing. They like my southern humor, y'all. And
It's because of the Dukes of Hazzard when you used to do it.
it was the Dukes of Hazzard horn.
It
You're
was
right.
attracting them. It was like a moth to a flame.
The General Lee
But
horn.
Tyler, the podcasts are time delayed because people can listen to the podcast
Good.
whenever they want, so it's
Very
not
good point.
live, right?
Good point.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a very different experience listening to it live. And
Yeah, they
what
can't read there, so they need to listen to podcasts.
I jump back and forth between tech news today and news. And I was already thinking what would happen next week when everything changes.
Hey, Dr. Francine, will you finish walking your dog in 20 minutes time?
Of course,
Thank
I
you.
have a time. They'll be asleep.
Tyler, have you seen the links about the banks in Sweden?
Oh, here we go. Okay, thank you. So here it is. So Expressen has this one. Big problems with... now we got a pop-up here. Hold on. No.
I have a good
Okay.
ad blocker for you if you need.
I guess, right. That was just a cookie notice because it was my first time going to Expressen. It says major problems with card payments, many customers affected. Swedbank, which is easily one of the biggest banks, if not the biggest, Swedbank and Sparbanken have suffered from operational disruptions during the morning. They were unable to log in or make Swish payments. The major bank Nordea, that if any bank is bigger than Swedbank, it's probably Nordea, writes in its app that they in turn have problems with card purchases. Some readers also state that they have problems shopping at ICA, which is the supermarkets in Sweden, and Pressbyrån, which is the convenience stores or like the 7-Elevens in Scandinavia. If you can't buy things at ICA or Pressbyrån, that's where you get food.
And your train tickets and bus tickets as well, and tram tickets.
And pay for your updating, your data plans on your phones and all kinds of things. On Monday morning, the major banks, Swedbank, were hit. Swedbank and Nordea, IKEA or ICA and Pressbyrån. That's pretty massive outage. So
Yeah.
the thing is
here that I sent you links about Handelsbanken and the rest as well. But what's really still is down is the WAN connections in between the banks. The thing is that the first of each month is the day that all of us that have a company gets all the payments for the one that are to pay that have their invoices at due the 30th or 31st of the month before. So I have still not received what I anticipate to be about 200 payments. None have come to our bank account so far. You are done.
Yeah, it's going to be a wild day there. I'm curious if Starbucks is giving out free drinks today.
Free
The
furniture
next,
at IKEA.
We don't even have Starbucks in Sweden anymore. They
they
have
took them
left
all
the
out. I
country.
know. No, there's still the one at Hamgotten and Regeneringsgaten at the
Oh, there is
Gallerian
one.
Mall. Yeah,
Oh, they are not totally extinct yet.
yeah. And there's also a Mall of Scandinavia. It's still there.
That is probably bound to die because the half of the shops in the Mall of Scandinavia is giving up. So yeah.
Is there something
It's going to be a
specific about
cold 6 weeks for you, Tyler.
Is it? Someone
why
had a
did they have to
question.
pull out? I'm just curious why they're pulling
It's a
out
good yes.
specifically.
I don't know why did the Starbucks pull out. They were all run.
The business model didn't work in Sweden. We were not interested in buying coffee with extra sugar in.
That's a great point. Yeah,
The thing
let me
is,
explain that.
Swedish coffee is probably the world's best, as I say as a
Yeah,
Swede.
well,
So you just like proper coffee. That's the
How dare you?
explanation.
here's. Let me explain.
Tyler, it's the whole fika break.
Yes, let me explain. So, as a Starbucks shareholder, let me explain what's going on here. That Sweden is the second biggest consumer of coffee internationally, globally, after Finland. We're right across the street, who they share a lot of similarities with, and it's also
You
for
mean per
Swedes.
capita, not in aggregate, right, Tyler?
Yeah, I mean per capita, yes.
Yeah.
So I would say the norm is like 4 cups a day. It's like there's a scheduled coffee break for everybody in Sweden at around 10 a.m. At lunch, you always have one. After dinner, you always have one, and it's just the way it is. So, they like very good coffee, and this ritual, the way that they do it, is very different from the American consumerism of Starbucks, where Starbucks is so perfectly suited to Americans because, by the way, many don't know this. As a Starbucks shareholder, let me explain. Starbucks is not in the coffee business. According to Starbucks, according to Howard Schultz, the creator of the company, Starbucks is in the making you feel good about yourself business. And that's why when you go to Starbucks, they want you to make a very complicated order, and they tell you very sincerely that if they don't do it perfectly, they will happily throw it away completely in the trash and make it again as many times as necessary until you are satisfied, because their business model is making you feel important for $4. And for coffee, that's very expensive coffee.
Well,
For
that's the answer though to why they never make their coffee any better. They don't have to. It's not their real price.
Right, the real product is giving you an ego boost for
Which is
$4.
suitable for American psyche.
Totally.
And the occasional misspelling of your name to incite some kind of social media craze, like, oh my god, they spelled Chris with 5 X's.
So that model didn't really translate to Scandinavia, because in Scandinavia, when you go to a restaurant, you'll be surprised to find out that the restaurant only has 2 things for sale for lunch: the fish and the chicken. And you, as an American, will say, what kind of joke of a restaurant is this? You don't have a menu. You just have the board out in front of the store that says, today's special, the fish or the chicken. And you walk in, and the waiter comes over to you and says, would you like to have the fish or the chicken? And you're like, am I on a reality? Is this like a hidden camera show or something? What kind of crazy restaurant is this that you only have 2 options? And because they're very efficient, and they make it all in the kitchen rapidly, because they know you're only going to order one or the other, and they can make huge volumes of it very efficiently, and that makes service very efficient, and they can keep the price lower and the quality higher because they're not focused on so many ingredients. And it's a brilliant system once you get used to it. However, what it does is it trains you as a customer to not ask for any special changes. So Swedes don't, and never would, and never will ask for, can I get with 2 cups and extra hot and a double pump of soy latte and a double foam and this and that and the
And a
crazy
unicorn,
ritual,
rainbow unicorn.
Some
right?
pumpkin
Like
spice.
with a double splash of pumpkin spice and cinnamon swirl and blah blah blah, and every American has their special unique I'm a snowflake order that they have at Starbucks, and Starbucks is enabling this. And they want you to do that. And so much so that the menus at Starbucks in Scandinavia say, here's how to order coffee at Starbucks. Number one, pick your type of milk. We've got cow milk, oat milk, almond milk, coconut milk, what have you.
Lactose
Lactose,
free.
they have lactose free in Scandinavia as well, which is fantastic. Anyway,
Oat milk.
and and then you pick your type of espresso, and then you pick how much foam you want, and then you pick your additive, like your flavorings, and they literally try and walk you through in a very systematic Scandinavian way of how to order a Starbucks drink. And Swedes are like, no, fuck it, I just want a coffee, because I grew up
Well,
in a world
it's
where
about
you don't
I
have
just want it
about
choices.
black,
choice.
just
It's
black
about
coffee.
choice in the United States.
Right, we are
Let's not.
obsessed with individualization, and we love 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 having our asses kissed by when we go into a retail establishment.
This is so true.
It's deleterious
McDonald's.
to the staff, though. I mean, the staff gets treated like a punching bag, and that's why you don't have anyone working. And sorry, Io.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say that a few years ago, actually, McDonald's outbid Starbucks for, the best coffee, quote unquote, the best coffee beans. And so it's actually, if you order the ground coffee from Starbucks versus the one from McDonald's, you'll actually notice a difference. So they didn't even want to pursue or put up a big enough fight in the auction to get the best beans. So they clearly don't care about the quality of the coffee. It's just how much can we pump up your ego? And I have to say, I myself do find that to be kind of an ego boost sometimes, when you have a shitty day or the weather sucks. Here in Canada, the weather can be sometimes very brutal in the winter, and a Starbucks coffee with all these beautiful features here and there can sometimes lift you up. And so maybe the $4, $5, $10 coffee sometimes can be an important part of living in North America.
How have we got to a point where a triple bypass frappuccino can make us feel better about ourselves while our coronary arteries groan under the strain? It's 700 calories in some of those Starbucks. It's
Because
Oh,
nuts,
freedom.
and all their compensation
Then
is
they
Well,
shit.
get
Yeah,
worse.
yeah.
Then
isn't
they
it
wonder
kind of like
how
how,
America's getting
people
fat.
who feel like they are powerless, like you see in LA, this is very common. You see like the homeless walk in front of traffic very slowly. And I think it's really just that people feel like the less control you have in your life, the more you want to exercise it in the one tiny way that you can. And so maybe for people who are feeling like, they're getting, buffeted around by life instead of controlling what their life is, the one way that you can feel it is this tiny little bit of control of, I want something this specific way, now you do it for me, which is basically like what probably a lot of people feel like they have in their days. So maybe it's really just one tiny area where you can feel like you control something in your life. But
that's
I
the
think
model.
I just, sorry.
That's the whole business.
Yeah, I mean, it's a,
Burger
Yeah,
King,
no, just give me black coffee, thank you.
yeah,
have it
but
your
I
way.
mean,
Yeah,
for a lot
black.
of people, that's what they're looking, that's a good model. You're always selling some core emotional appeal. And that's their core emotional appeal is you feel like you get screwed over a lot. Like this is, or you feel like you're
Ooh.
not in control here. We're going to give you some control. But I think I just read that they're making $16 an hour and they get help with IVF. I don't know if you guys
And
saw that at all. There, I mean,
something
And
those
about
are
Europe
some,
is
college too.
making fun of the
That's expensive.
Americans while we're ordering Starbucks at the myriad of like all the shit we put in it. Europeans look at us like we're mad. They really do.
But
They're like,
they don't
they
And
think we're
charge
rightfully
crazy.
extra.
so.
They don't charge extra for like extras, right? Like,
What?
so that's kind of the part too, is that in America we're used to being nickel and dime. So when you say, hey, I want extra whip, it's like, oh well, that's an extra 50 cents. But you go into Starbucks, you pay a flat price, you kind of call the shots, and for them it's just margin, but they're selling experience, so they've
But if
got
you're
you
gonna,
hooked.
But if you can imagine what Tyler said about the fika breaks in Sweden, because I've worked in Scandinavia and I know exactly what he's talking about. And also, I've gone and worked in Italy where, like, let me tell you, those are sacrilegious things that they're doing in Starbucks to people's coffee because the Swedish would, the Swedish would probably poo poo it and the Italians would probably chase them out of the shop. Because a doppio macchiato is nothing like what you see in the US. And a cappuccino is really, really small. And a cortado is even like, it's wild. It's like a whole art over here. Like literally, you will be poo-pooed if you're not trained by Illy Lavazza or another one of the Italian coffee houses here. And it's really wild because they do look at Americans like we're nuts when we go into Starbucks. And a lot of the Starbucks here in Netherlands have also sort of started to wean their way out of the country. I know that in Belgium, there's not that many as well because they still have that sort of small cafe culture where they have the Araca beans, they roast here themselves. They've got Australians that
I
come in
miss
doing
that so
roasting.
much.
Love
That's
it,
that's
love
where
it.
America's going. That's where America's going. Most of the coffee snobs are going to places that roast their own beans and
Oh, totally.
yeah.
Chris, it's not a coffee snob. You know, it's actually that they just want a
It's a
good
coffee
taste of
purist.
coffee.
Dude, I'll
They're
drink
coffee
Sanka.
purists.
Dude,
Coffee
I'll
It's
drink it
also
out of
their
purism.
coffee.
I'll drink it out of a
I'm all
poker
about
cup.
it, man.
The
Man, I'm all
Starbucks
about the
coffee's.
espressos without sugar, man. It's pretty tight, but
Yes.
Has anyone else noticed it's burnt as well? It's just overcooked. The
Starbucks
beans are
is burned,
too
yeah.
hot. It's
Starbucks
burnt.
beans are totally burnt. When you go to Italy and
It's
Rome
foul
and you have
coffee.
a cup of like an espresso, you could tell how Starbucks beans are burnt completely. And
It's
most of them are
horrible
Arabic
coffee.
beans.
But I saw this. So I saw this documentary years ago on Starbucks, like the history of Starbucks. It was really fascinating. It was right around when that book, The Starbucks Way, or whatever it is, came out. But it was eating with when they came out was diner coffee. That is how Americans drank coffee for the most part. A pot that had been sitting on a burner that was, just drip
At
coffee.
Denny's
At Denny's,
or Waffle
exactly. And
House.
it was literally just fuel, and no one really enjoyed drinking coffee. It was just something that you drank to get through the day, or like it was
Oh
like the
my
drink
God.
of truckers. It
My,
was really, that's what it
my
was, and
Like
that's
a
abuela
what
would
people
Marlboro
turn
came
Red.
with.
my abuela would turn over in her grave. Like Puerto
Same.
Rico and Cuban coffee, she would turn over in her grave if she even heard that because I used to make bustelo and modelo. And let me tell
Thank
you, the
you.
Puerto Ricans have their
Opelong.
culture of coffee that is nowhere near the crap that I see inside of Starbucks and some of these Denny's. And ugh, it's disgusting.
There's nothing like the smell of Bustelo first thing in the morning.
Well, just so
I'm making it now. I'm actually grinding beans right now. I'm so like, I feel very inspired by this conversation.
everyone should. Howard Schultz, who was chairman of Starbucks, grew up in the same community in Brooklyn that I did. And in Brooklyn and in most of New York, this is before Starbucks existed, but even people who were from New York originally, or from Boston, by the way, if you ask them, and you're going to all say we're crazy, we all prefer Dunkin' Donuts coffee even today
Oh
until
my
to
God, totally.
Starbucks.
Ken, that's absolutely it. Spot on right there.
100%.
Okay, and I'm amazed that Howard Schultz thinks that Starbucks is better than Dunkin' Donuts, having grown up like a mile from me. So.
Ken,
Well, it's
my
And
still a
morning in New York would
$26
be
billion
coffee and finish.
revenue business.
and
Still a
Tyler,
$26 billion revenue business. So evidently there's a consumer out there for it.
This is
For
the best
Starbucks or
one.
Dunkin' Donuts?
This is the best one that just came out. You're
Starbucks.
gonna love this one, Tyler. Burger King to give crypto rewards with Robinhood. Burger King's Royal Perks users who spend more than $5 on the chain's app will be rewarded with one coin from a pool of either 20 BTC, 200 Ethereum, or 2 million Doge. I think that just says it all right there.
That's amazing. I can't wait to see Kanye talk about it with Burger King because he owns a few Burger King
Exactly.
restaurants, right? So it's
Wait,
going to be the Kanye cone, Kanye
I'm
coin.
gonna
Yeah.
tweet that out,
in
Oh
Tyler.
my God.
You,
in
you
And
have
he
to re-
in
changed
you
his
have to
Southern
name,
realize that
right?
even most Americans outside of the Northeast have never experienced, to a large extent, either Dunkin' Donuts, which is now finally growing nationwide,
Yeah,
Dunkin'
Ken,
Donuts,
Dunkin'
Dunkin's
Donuts
is
is
better.
or or,
Dunkin's
or, or
Dunkin'
much
Chocolate
better.
Clearly, it
Gods.
DNC.
didn't go west of the Mississippi, right? And then
Ken,
there was the Krispy Kreme convention or whatever, where
yeah, but
all
Dunkin'
the
Donuts
donut
has made
shops,
it.
right? They carved out their turf, and
Dunkin'
then you
Donuts
couldn't
knocked
expand
out
past it.
Starbucks.
Dunkin' Donuts knocked out Starbucks in Harlem. So you're right, Ken. Dunkin' Donuts came in like 2 years ago, and it's ever since Dunkin' Donuts came in, Starbucks is battling now Dunkin' Donuts because people are seeing the difference. Starbucks' biggest advantage right now is the drive-through. They're pushing hard on drive-through, they're pushing hard on mobile order, and that's the consumption habits. I mean, it's this morning drive that we talk about in America where we won't even have time to eat. So every Starbucks is on the right side of going out of town traffic. And that's the pattern you're always going to see of a McDonald's and of a Starbucks. So where McDonald's used to be, Starbucks are now popping up because it's on the right side of going onto the freeway. That's always the rule for these things.
That's
Darren
interesting.
has
That's an
something there.
adaptation, I think, to changing habits and certainly to, well, I mean, that's certainly become part of a growth
And
strategy
Panda
during the
Expresses are
pandemic
always
because,
on the
well,
pandas are
no,
always on the coming home side.
well, historically, they're most of what they had was a
Did we
I
lose you,
think Big
Alexandra?
Coffee wants to silence her. I think that I think it just like Either cut. that or it's Big Tuna.
their own internal bakery. I mean, sorry. Well, they used to license with Sweet Street, and now they have their own internal bakery. And the prices that like they make a huge amount of margin on the food also. So because people are hanging out and snacking. So what they had is they had this sort of like it was for college students primarily who would spend a lot of money there, and so they must have adapting their model to be more like not a gathering location was probably not very easy, but it looks like they did it successfully. So yay them, right?
Yeah, because they used to have the tagline, the third place. And that, besides home and work, Starbucks was the third place.
Yes,
And so
that
they,
that was
Remember
that's
when they
another
sold
concept.
music there? They had CDs.
yeah, they had a lot. That's exactly right. They were heavy into music for a while. But of course, you know, COVID.
Dr. Francine, are you ready for your room?
I am totally ready. Let me allow the dogs to leave.
Okay. I'll start in like 3 minutes.
Okay.
Cheryl, here I want to put the survey link one last time. So if you have not, it's an incredibly close race to see when we do tech news around the world.
By the way,
So the
Tyler,
link up,
2 p.m.
yes,
UK is 7 a.m. Pacific time.
right. So if you could please, if
Oh,
you
that's
have not
good for
yet,
me.
please click on the title, the link at the top of the room, and just very simply answer the question, what time should we do tech news around the world? If it were up to you, so that we can include your vote in determining when we do it now with the time zone changes occurring. And it's a very close race between 7 a.m. UK and 7 a.m. Pacific, which is 2 p.m. UK. And it comes down to the final 4 minutes because we've had this going on when we met earlier today at 7 a.m. UK. Now we're meeting 7 a.m. Pacific. And we want to make sure the viewers in both audiences have a chance to share their preferences. Okay. There was one or two last little headlines. Cheryl sent in this one from BBC that double jabbed can easily spread COVID at home. Vaccinated people are catching and then spreading the virus to those they live with, a UK study finds. They warn, passing it, the experts warn who have studied UK household cases, individuals who have had 2 vaccine doses can be just as infectious as those who have not been vaccinated, according to the BBC. And the last but not least,
Tyler, can
Ken.
I comment on this? Sorry, I know you're trying to run fast, but you need to
Yeah.
read into this. That headline is slightly misleading. It's kind of leading the reader to believe that vaccines aren't helpful. What it says is if you have the same infection level as a vaccinated person, as another unvaccinated person, that you spread it just as easily. Like when we dove into the data yesterday, that was what the article actually said instead of just that it's, instead of that headline that makes it seem like it's almost pointless to get a vaccine.
Yeah, but I
So
think the,
No.
the the headline comes at an interesting time because we're thinking about
vaccinating the children because they themselves represent these super spreader events. So parents who are not vaccinated risk being infected. So this should encourage folks to vaccinate their children, so that, life can go back to normal, because it's hard to care for kids, as you know, Chris, during the pandemic.
And then the last one is from Ken, which says from Bloomberg that Spotify has tried being Netflix. Now it wants to be YouTube. The Swedish streaming giant is adding videos to its app again and hoping for better results. Yep, they're allowing podcasters to include videos like YouTube. So there you go. And that takes us to the start of Cheryl's interview with Dr. Francine Hardaway, a whole deep dive, which will be very interesting. In my university studies at UC San Diego, I had a professor, Adrian Yannick, who was a huge fan of Dr. Francine Hardaway. So I've been familiar with Dr. Francine Hardaway long before Clubhouse, going back to 2000, where we got regular comments about, how Francine felt about this and about that, and everything was. So when I came into Clubhouse, I was like, "Oh, I feel like I know you," and
No, you
so it'll
knew
be
me.
interesting to,
You also knew me when you worked for Jason.
yeah, that too.
When you were
And
steep decline on Twitter.
yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right. So I'm looking forward to that interview. So we'll go over and start that, and I'll update the top link. Or Cheryl, can you put back the link at the top of the room so people can just hop over by clicking the link?
Hey, Carla, just a quick note for some of the Americans in the room, and I doubt there's probably many people here who this applies to. But if you have a Sprint phone, the Sprint network was supposed to be shut down at the end of the year, but because of government pressure, because of issues with the T-Mobile merger, T-Mobile announced they're going to keep the Sprint network open till at least the end of March, and it might extend beyond that. And that's also if you have like a Boost mobile phone or something which runs on Sprint. I just thought I'd mention that just happened last week.
I have to go to a
Alrighty.
bunch of back-to-back calls, but please come after Francine's interview. Please come to the blockchain and crypto news and analysis room it's 10:30 Pacific, so an hour from now. Please come. It'll be very fun. Q&A is always open, and we look forward to seeing all of you. Have a wonderful time here. Take care. I'll see you soon. I'll see everybody soon.
Remind Cheryl to link to that room when they close when Cheryl and Francine are finished with their room, that they put the link like I'm doing at the top to help people get to the next room.
Awesome.
Alrighty.